So welcome back. This is Dr. Dorothea Weirsley, and we're continuing our journey in Introduction to Personal Psychology and Social Leadership. And I would like to share some slides with you to dive deeper into the topic. So right here, we're diving into awareness as a base for experience. And quoting the distinguished philosopher and psychologist William James, who stated, "Millions of items in the outward order are present to my senses, which never properly enter into my experience." Why? Because they have no interest for me, my experience free to attend to. All those items which I notice shape my mind. Without selective interest, experience is an utter chaos. So without our attention, things good as non-existent. So why is this really important, this quote, especially for social leadership or leadership in general? That's because we are talking about our leadership, leading ourselves, and what it means in transpersonal psychology. So it's this ability to understand that what you focus on is that which you see. And William James asked by saying, tend to. So in other words, what draws your focus and your attention will be that which you will see, which you will. So it is important in leadership and self-leadership to be able to decide consciously what you're going to be looking at. So in meditation, there's two types of meditation. One is open focus, one is closed focus. In open focus, you sit there and you are aware of everything around you and you let everything come in and experience. In closed focus, you are focusing in on one specific tiny thing. You could do this, guys, open if you want to experiment with it and wants to just sit there. And when you're sitting there, paying attention to everything in your field and sort of field of view, that is. So letting everything in without judgment, but just letting it come to you. And then you can close your eyes and see whatever internal images and whatever internal things that come to you, and just be open to it and just observe it. Then you can open your eyes again and pick a spot in the room you're sitting in, or if you're outside, some specific thing in the landscape, and you just focus just on that. And that's your meditation. You look at it and you focus on every little detail of it, and you let that come into your awareness. And then you could close your eyes and do the same thing. And notice that maybe you have an image in your mind that you're carrying, that you can focus on all the last little details, or maybe not, and you can do the same thing. So then you open up your eyes again, and then the conversation is about the choice that you have on what you focus on and what you attend to. So this is deeply transpersonal, and it is very important, as we'll go on. And here the picture is from Jung's book, which is, by the way, in Sophia University Library. You can see right here one of his drawings. And here it is clearly depicted how the thing that is focused on stands out versus all the other background. And your eyes are automatically drawn to this one thing. And that one thing is what you will attend to and what you will experience. And all the other things fade away. William James goes on to say here that this is utter chaos, or it doesn't even exist. So I will leave you, I will leave that to you. This course is too short to go into that. However, that's a discussion in itself, which is in phenomenology and neurophenomenology. So onward we go. Here in this next slide, you will be experimenting with walking a labyrinth and focusing on that. And I will guide you through it and why that exercise is important for leadership and creativity. And we will be looking at now after you've done that. So please pause this lecture and go back and follow the exercises and the show of walking the labyrinth so that you get an experiential sense of what I'm talking about. So welcome back now again, and you've had some experience now walking a labyrinth and how that may be relevant and important for leadership. Because it helps you to focus. Walking this labyrinth helps you to focus and create awareness of your own experience. And here in this slide, we're going to delve into it from a neuroscientific perspective, which is the metacognitive centered regulation. So in other words, the ability to focus on whatever you want to focus on, and the awareness that that is what is building your experience and how you can lead yourself and therefore others is metacognitive centered regulation. So in other words, if there's reactivity, like somebody says something and you get very upset, that's reactivity, and you see it here on the slide in red. That's amygdala. This is the center for it's the center that activates fight and flight and really reactivity. So somebody makes you really angry. So then you just start reacting, and there's a loop in here where you just keep on going, and maybe you'll say something that you might regret later, but you're no longer attending your experience. You are no longer regulating your experience, and you're certainly not metacognitive, because now you're swept away in all sorts of reactive emotional patterns that you may have. And you may like go into this by saying, you know, that the context is your memories. So you may be using various other parts of your brain to support that. So, or there's the habit loop right here, where, you know, you're just going, well, this is what I've always done, so I'm going to continue doing that. And you buckle down and you act just the way you always have. And the context, no context. It becomes different when you learn to rewire your brain, is that you can then go into the prefrontal cortex, and you have called reappraisal decision. So it enables you to take a step back and assess what's going on for you at that moment in time, and react in a way that you choose. So this is what this is all about, is neuroscientific. However, as you can see, these things have a material impact. In other words, whatever you do actually can change your brain structure. It can change your neural structure. So what neurons fire together, wire together. You keep on doing this, you keep on having a practice by which you train yourself to come back into not only into reception, but plainly into what are you focusing, what are you attending to in your experience. And that enables you to break things like habit circuit that we have here, or craving circuit, or affect circuit, if meaning affect is emotion, right? So if this is putting you into the wrong direction, so if you're reacting badly to whatever has triggered you. So, so essentially, what is important about this slide is how it impacts your physiology. So how the things make a difference. And also, there is a whole circuit that then from the PCC here that then goes into your body and back from your body. So there is a whole body communication. So it's really important to pay attention how your body feels. This is not something that's terribly new. A lot of wisdom traditions point to that, and transpersonal psychology definitely does. So this somatic integration, this integration of the body and the body signals are extremely important. That will enable you to stay grounded throughout reactivity. And it is physiologically proven. So let's go backwards a little bit. What is so important about not being reactive and not flying off the handle and paying attention to patterns of meta awareness and being able to manage yourself into that direction? Well, it starts off with well-being. So well-being is when we have the right balance of pleasure, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And when you are able to really have a relationship with those things, and that is positive, supportive, and enriching, then you are able to enter more of the state of flow. And why is flow important? So this is the next slide. So there was a gentleman, Mikhail Chimansky, and don't worry about pronouncing his name. I have a hard time with it as well. And he wrote a book, a popular book a long time ago called The Optimal Experience, in which he proposed the theory, if you will, of flow. And what flow is the ability to navigate between anxiety and boredom. So that would be considered the flow channel. So it is, as you can see here, the right balance between challenges and skills to overcome them. Why? Because this is the place where something holds your attention. So again, your awareness is focused on something and you're keeping at it. And at the same time, it's not too difficult so that you give up. So that usually creates a state of flow. And so here it's a challenge, and it does require skill. It's concentration and avoiding interruption, maintaining control, speed and feedback, transformation of time happens here. So in other words, like for example, if you're studying and you've just found the right way to write and it's just flowing, it's just coming out of you, it's effortless, and you're showing up for it in a totally different way. It's almost like you don't know where the information is coming from. It feels like it may be that way. So that is because you've entered a state of flow. Or when you watch people in sports, when they just really do great, like is it skiing or swimming, that can also be a state of flow. They are now impeccably engaged with their activity, and their focus is only on that. So closed focus, and the feedback loop from their body and the neural structure to go with that. So flow as a concept is extremely important in transpersonal psychology, and obviously also in leadership. So in the same line, there's a positive psychology as a philosophy and transpersonal psychology. Why? Because positive psychology supports all of these things that bring you into a more fulfilled place of living. And therefore, if you're leading yourself from that place, you are by tendency also leading others from that place, which is what is important. So here we have several things and how it is all related. And one of the things that you can see here is flow, the psychology of time, creativity, wisdom and knowledge, hedonic approaches, emotions and how they relate, positive emotions, love and humanity, humor, transcendence, the strengths of that. We also have applied positive psychology, which would be positive business, positive education, so things that are really important for us here at Sophia. And the motivation and theories, eudaimonic approaches. So all these things tie into this essentially extremely important basis from which social leadership will then emerge, because if you're living your life in this place, then of course you can lead others more effectively. So how do we let our creativity and leadership then come from this space, and how do we scale this in social leadership? So let's go back to the labyrinth, and why the labyrinth and the practice of walking the labyrinth can be important for you. And this practice is also research-based. So it's not a practice that is, yes, it's based in the wisdom traditions, but there's a good reason why it's based in the wisdom traditions. So there is research on it that it actually brings you benefits. And it is considered to be a convenient tool for decreasing psychological and physical stress, because as you're walking, you're coming into yourself. So it's a contemplative practice. It's very transpersonal, which is why I chose it to teach you here. One of the ways of getting back or coming into flow, coming into that space where you then can access all the positive things of positive psychology. And then as you go deeper and deeper, and the neuroscience supports you in that, and as you are creating more positive circuits, then you can live your life increasingly from that space, and then you can support other social leadership as well as support yourself, and maybe lead a team in the right way. So this walking labyrinth is often used in religious and health-related institutions for quiet walking and meditation. And here we have a study which measured essentially sinus arrhythmia, breathing, and salivary amylase, which is essentially spit, to see how the physiological responses of the autonomic nervous system and the short-term ones are related to walking a labyrinth. So there was, in this study, the result that although there was a physiological arousal while walking the labyrinth, so breathing patterns increase. So remember I said about flow. So there is an arousal. In other words, you are doing something, and yet at the same time, you are coming into your center so that physiologically, you're then calming down. And this was then seen through both the breathing, and so there was a heightened physiological and self-reported relaxation as well during and after the labyrinth walk. So notice this is exactly what we had discussed before about Chemansky's flow concept, and the ability to stay in that pattern might be easier for some of you to do this type of walking meditation rather than a sitting meditation. It's quite different. And it releases certain things. Also, it brings you focus into yourself in a totally different way. But this was just to show you that it is scientifically and research based. So there's different types and styles of labyrinth. And they depend on what culture you come from and what culture you would like to practice from. I think from a Chinese perspective, and I've talked about this before, there is probably a resonance of that in walking the Tao, the way. But it is slightly different because there's a structure here. So in other words, you are following a preset pattern, which enables you to relax and let go even more. To attain that state of flow. So you have choices here. I would encourage you to either go out and draw this in chalk on a in a parking lot and walk it, or in sand if you have that around you, or maybe use sticks in the park. We've done before, just walk that. Or you can use it with your finger and retrace the steps, although in all honesty, that's not as, obviously not as beneficial because, yeah, you're not doing it, it's your whole entire body. So that center that I showed you before, the PCC, you probably won't be able to switch and regulate your physiologicals in the same way as if you're actually walking and taking the time to find your center by walking into the center, making it a whole body experience. So consequences. How does this affect the perception of self and others? Well, as we are able to access the state of flow and able to connect with our own perception of time may change, or perception of our ability may flow differently because we don't have the thought patterns. I don't know. Maybe you know this. There's something called the superego that comes in and bombards you possibly with like all sorts of thoughts, like you can't do this, this is not good, or in terms of leadership, the worst is that if leading others and you've got this thing, like this voice in the back of your head that's going, you will never be able to do this, because then you can't focus on what the situation requires, and you are no longer in flow. So as you're practicing being in flow by walking the labyrinth, your perception of time and your perception of your ability may change, because you can consciously, with awareness, take away from those thoughts that are going and judging you, to a flowing experience where you're balancing yourself between and what is holding your attention. So maybe perception of a professor or boss, or the expectations thereof, can throw you off. The internal dialogue is just what I mentioned, your focus, or maybe your lack thereof. There may be overwhelm, there may be stress, there may be additional learning and creativity obstacles. So all of this is part of your perception, and all of this you do not necessarily need to engage in if you're practicing the types of tools like the labyrinth. So there's another thing that makes this all more complicated too, is that, for example, we have all these lenses in front of our eyes that affect the way we see the world, right? So personal values, generation, nationality, your sexual orientation, your gender, your faith, your spirituality, or lack thereof. So all of these lenses are on top of everything. And we had addressed from a neuropsychological perspective, reactivity, but let's not forget that all of these lenses on top of that are also shaping the way you view the world. So not only are you attending to whatever you're focused on, but all of these other things may be distortions in what you see. So the more aware you become of what you're looking at, and the more of these transpersonal practices you're able to engage in, the more you can then consciously become aware of what you want to put into the world and how. And if it comes to social leadership, this is terribly important, because then you're able to lead people towards more of themselves, right? And produce business for good in the world, or nonprofit for good in the world. So these are the obstacle learning and leading that we just talked about. So these triggers, the lenses, the distortions. And so when people receive information that is consistent with their preferred theory, learning does not easily occur. So if you're not aware of any of this, then when something new comes along, you don't have that discernment to understand what is good in this, what is useful in this, how can this help other people. And that means also that it becomes harder to be open for creativity and address matters, possible opportunities in a different way. So this then makes it much harder to lead. And here you are. This next video is more about the positive and negative loops, and is the next step on this journey in social leadership transformation, really, essentially, and an introduction to transpersonal psychology. And I thank you.